Hey, folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, it's good to see you, man. How you doing?
Good. It's good to see me. It's good to see you. But more than anything, Shawn, there's someone Lions fans are really, really happy to see, and you know who that is.
Is that Jared Goff? Is he no longer
Scott Daly? It's the long snapper, Scott Daly.
Is he no longer the bridge quarterback? Because I think the man you're referring to, of course, is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, said he was coming back. And some of the response I saw last night from some of the national media is, I wonder if this means Goff will be the starter again next year, and is he no longer the bridge quarterback? These are for some national analysts. It was interesting.
Well, that's you know what? Here's the thing, right? As I've told you, Shawn, you know, Detroit is nationally the way we're considered in Detroit is northern Cincinnati and eastern Cleveland. Places people don't want to come. We never saw any national media come to the Lions to do stories and interviews. So all this hype, you know, I think it's a little bit the perspective skewed. I think we have a different perspective of it in Detroit. Nationally, people don't really know much about the Lions still. You know, they haven't gotten their due. And that's the kind of silliness that leads to that is Jared Goff, you know, he actually played okay. And is he going to be? That issue has been decided long ago. So, yeah, of course he's not going to be.
Well, in fairness, it was just a couple of places I saw it in most of the news. And since the last month of the season, really over the last month of the season, I've seen lots of national love for this team. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with Campbell and his personality, but the winning. I'm going to push back. No, this is not Cincinnati. This is
nationally.
People, I'm talking. That's right. That's what I'm saying. There are people out there have an understanding that this team is lost for a long time. They understand Detroit being the stepchild of the country, and they
wait, can we get that on the license plate? Detroit, the country stepchild.
Yeah, they have a sense of that. That's why I think that's. I mean, obviously Campbell had a lot to do with the love that the Lions got the last month outside of this region, but a part of it too is the losing history of this franchise, and the context of the city. So it's an underdog, right? I mean, that's why all that talk about. Outside of Detroit, all that talk about, wow, if the Lions get on a run, they're going to be America's team. It's because of the history. I mean, right? I mean, that's how this works. And then if you start winning for a while, then that fades away. The Braves were fun to go to your sport. They were fun. They had those great pitchers, and then they started winning too much, and people are like, it's amazing how that works, you know?
They'll never. I mean, let's just be real. First of all, I'm going to text Mike Ulrich, your good buddy. I'm going to tell him to change it from Soul of Detroit, his podcast, to Detroit, America's Stepchild. But you know, Detroit's never going to be America's team. I mean, come on, it's a cute story. It's an underdog thing, and just the Lions ever got on a roll. It's just people just. It's such a, you know, Detroit is such a. Unique city right now in America. People have a hard time understanding really what it is because all they can really tell you is cars. Once upon a time, they could tell you about Motown, but they just don't have a firm grasp of like, well,
that's not the first thing people think about. I think a lot of people think about, it depends on the
cars.
Age. No, I think a lot of people think about crime. And fairly or not, right? And
not anymore, not as much anymore.
Well, no, maybe not recently, but of a certain age. I mean, it's funny. You were talking about Mike Elrick and the Soul of Detroit. And by the way, Soul of Detroit, isn't that incredibly presumptuous and even pretentious? 3 white dudes in a basement in a suburb of Detroit. Okay, it's the suburb happens to be right next to the city limits, but still, isn't that pretty presumptuous?
I love it. It's perfect,
and I'm part of it. I mean, I take part of it. I you know, it's like sitting there watching somebody get their purse stolen and not doing anything and just saying, okay, I'm not going to get involved. That's me. I'm complicit in this travesty of pretentiousness.
Yeah. Oh, there's another good name for the podcast: Travesty of Pretentiousness. That's or the name of Mike's next garage band. But yeah, no. Mike's stealing the purse, and you and Pellhauer are taking a few bucks out of the till there. So
yeah, I can't. I mean, how can I complain when I'm complicit? You know what I mean? I said my piece a while ago. I don't even know why I brought this up to be. Oh, we were actually talking about this on Soul of Detroit. If we can handle a little cross promotion here about the idea of Mike had written a really good piece about the Q line and how, it's sort of the 2000s version, the aughts. Well, I guess it was after the aughts, the 2000 teens version of the people mover with the sort of, the metaphor where it went nowhere, right? The city that's going nowhere. Yeah, the people mover to nowhere, and the Q line is the same. In any case, we're talking about the Q line, and in the comment section, which he doesn't read, by the way, he doesn't believe in reading the comment section. We're full of a lot of people who would say, they would never go down to Detroit, right? A lot of Metro Detroiters who want to go to Detroit, and some even former Detroiters. And we were kind of talking about that dynamic. And I don't know that dynamic is understood outside of this region, and the nuance that people around here understand it. But there's some sense of that around the country that's left over from the 70s and the 80s. But you're right, with young people, they probably don't think about Detroit that way at all.
No, I don't. Nationally, that does not have it. I mean, you and I travel enough. We know enough. We lived in enough different places. We know people in different cities and countries even. Yeah, people just, I mean, for the better, Detroit has lost that murder capital association. So, they think of it. Why are we even talking about this?
I'm not sure. I told the last time I was over, the last time I was overseas.
Goff is America's quarterback.
Overseas,
it's not. Detroit's not going to be America's city. It's never going to be America's city. It's just not going to happen. No, it's not going to be.
It's not going to be America's city, but it does speak to a few things that Americans love, and that is the underdog, the can do, the try hard, and this team has some of that. And in the context of the city absolutely has that, especially for people our age or older, and probably even 10, 15 years younger. With young people, you're right. They're different associations. But I saw some family in Europe a few years ago, and whenever people would want to know where I'm from, and whenever I would say I live outside of Detroit, because I don't want to be one of those folks that say, well, I'm from Detroit, because I'm not
from LA.
But I live in a suburb outside of Detroit. It's actually a city outside of Detroit. It's not a suburb. But Ann Arbor's a weird place that way. In any case,
how is it not a suburb?
They would because it's its own city, and I think it's just far enough. You could call it an exurb, I guess, if you want to. You should know about that. You grew up in an exurb. LA is full of exurbs. But 20 million people, man, you can't all cram them into the same city.
We all go eat at the same at the Peach Pit with Brandon and Dylan. So
I like that the Peach. But anyway,
people go surfing.
People would perk up and want to talk about it, and they had ideas about Detroit, and that's true when I travel around this country too. Now, I'm not saying they're all good ideas, but yeah, you know how it is. When you tell people who you work for or where you're from, that you live in this area, yeah, people are usually interested because they have a lot of preconceived ideas about the city. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and one of them is that the Lions, as you know, your favorite quote from Ozark is the Lions suck and they'll always suck. And that's what people believe
it's
about
inevitable,
the Lions.
Right? Yeah.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
And it'll, even when they've had a little, they've had a little bit of winning, right? They've been to the playoffs. They've had Stafford, Calvin, Barry, all this stuff. They've had these little glimmers, but it doesn't stick because, to change that perception, you have to become the Patriots or the Steelers or something like that. So it's going to be, and by the way, I had one question from a reader who an email a few days ago who said, when are the Lions going to become the Ravens? When are we going to have this uninterrupted string of winning, this 15-year glory period? How and when is that going to happen? And it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard for any team to do that in the NFL, especially. But until that happens, the Lions are always just going to be the lovable losers who maybe have a glimmer here and there.
Well, what's interesting, Carlos, and I don't know what you thought. We were texting about this a little bit last night, but so Ben Johnson, getting back to Ben Johnson after 8 minutes of nonsense from us. Sorry about that, listener. But I know you've probably come to expect that from us, so we're trying to meet that demand of silliness. In any case, so Ben Johnson's coming back. He was a front runner. It was reported for Carolina. He interviewed with two other places at the Colts and Denver. No, the Colts and another team. I can't think.
Houston Texans.
Houston, yeah. In any case, so it was a legitimate opportunity over there for them. He decides he's got, I think the quote is unfinished business,
yes.
Which is whatever. I didn't think Well, we can
Okay,
talk
just
about.
don't let's not spread that around because I'm angry about it. But
I
go
didn't
ahead.
think you're always angry. I didn't think he was going to go, and we can talk about.
Oh,
I
okay,
told
yeah,
you
right.
that. I told
You're
you
right. You're
this.
right. I told you we were texting about it, and you triggered
I've
me, and I
told you
said let's
this.
save it for the show.
I've told you this for several weeks. I didn't think it was, we'll talk about this in a minute. But I want to get your take on the reaction last night, because speaking of this idea of the Ravens and the sustained success and the fan reaction here, people were a lot of Lions fans last night that I could see on social media. Again, I know that's just a percentage, but they were stunned in a really positive way, and they're like, "Is this really the end of us being us? Are we really turning a corner here that we can keep somebody? This is one of the hottest coaching candidates out there, and we kept him." And that's what they're thinking, right? Like, oh my God, this is better than any free agent we're going to sign in the
Yes.
offseason. And
Yes.
so, but the reaction to that last night, people were like, wow, maybe we really are changing. I mean, what do you think?
Okay, so the thing is that things are changing, but it really has nothing to do with the Lions. It's just luck. It's dumb luck because NFL owners are dumb. And Ben Johnson, he comes off more as like a financial advisor than an NFL head coach. And I mentioned this in the column the other day. This is one of the reasons that Dan Campbell will probably always have a job in the NFL, because he feels like a football coach. He is football personified. He's what, billionaire NFL owners don't know anything about football, but they want to feel good about who they hire. And they want to feel like this guy knows what he's talking about. And I wrote this in the column about, the things you have to be concerned about. And one of them was Ben Johnson leaving and what could trip him up. Well, it is hard to get a job right out of the gate. He doesn't have a ton of like upper level experience, executive experience. So, the interviews, how did they go? They were only virtual. He didn't do them in person. So if they don't like his answers, if he doesn't come across the right way, fiery, feisty, dynamic, strong leader, you never know what they're looking for. I will say that it's stupid. These people, these three teams who probably are, told him in so many ways, he and his agent, we're not going to hire you. You're not coming in for a second round of interviews. They're morons, because he is so good at his job. When you think about it, when he took Jared Goff off the trash heap, he really had no stars on offense, lost his Pro Bowl tight end, didn't have really an established run game, didn't have a lot going for him other than that offensive line. The offensive line was the one thing that was, an elite level unit in the NFL. Good players, but no stars. No like DeAndre Hopkins type guys or Derek. Not one guy that you could point to like, whoa, this guy. Pro Bowler, All Pro, nothing like that. And he turned it into one of the best offenses in the NFL. Fun to watch, exciting, productive. And they had the worst NFL defense by total yardage, and they still won 9 games. This guy could basically go out, be a head coach, hire the worst defensive coordinator he can find, and still win 9 games and flirt with the playoffs. So this is the thing where he's not going to last long. Did we turn a corner? The Lions fans turn a corner? Is it happening? Well, there's some luck involved here, but I don't think Ben Johnson's going to be here very long. So the good news is the momentum hopefully can continue into next year, because you have him, like you said, Shawn, number 1 free agent, number 1 draft pick. It's Ben Johnson. He's going to be making the biggest difference.
So look, Ben Johnson's really good, but you're acting like he did this with nothing and won 9 games, when the fact that the defense changed in the second half of the season. He had one of the best 2 or 3 offensive lines in the league. He had a nice short yardage back in Jamal Williams and solid complementary receivers out there. Hawkinson was a good player. I get it. And you wrote that they were giving up on the season, by the way. I don't want to bring that up, though. I don't want to bring that up. Just like you wrote Ben Johnson was gone. I don't want to bring that up. I don't want to bring that up. Oh, my goodness. But anyway, so that was my little pushback on your Ben Johnson love.
Yeah, I guess they could have just hired the janitor to run the offense. He had all these stars and amazing pieces, and this defense played better in the second half. So yeah, maybe you're right.
the offense got better when Campbell took over last year. Look, I mean,
and he was the passing game coordinator. Ben Johnson probably had a fair amount to do with.
No,
Campbell.
there's no question. There's no question. But this is God, I can't believe I'm actually say this, but it takes several people. It takes a lot of people, right?
A village.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not going to say that exactly. But to your point about them getting lucky, I don't know. I mean, do you believe the reporting that he was a front runner for the Panthers job and that didn't change and that he decided he wanted to stay? You never want to give anybody credit. You never want to actually say, all right, you make a decision. So how would you like it at every decision you ever made in your life? People are like, no, that's not it. I don't think so. You don't believe that. I don't think so. That's what you're doing.
What? You know what? It's just such a it's a really naive idea to think that he wanted to come back just because he's got a soft spot for Detroit.
That's not why he came
wants
back.
To be here.
I don't think that's why he came back
with the Lions. Now, when you get a chance, they don't come around that often. When you are a hot coaching candidate and you get a chance to become a head coach in the NFL, you grab it. And the only reason that he didn't take it is because he could see the handwriting on the wall and knew that he wasn't going to be a finalist for this job for whatever reason.
Even though reporting tells us that he was a finalist. And even by some reporting, the front runner for the Carolina job. Now, maybe he wasn't for the other jobs.
I don't know. I mean, who it's a reporting source?
He's not ready. He's not ready, and he's has enough self. This is my opinion. It's just an opinion. But to me, what makes a lot more sense is that he knows he's not ready. There are plenty of us that do that. I turned down an offer to come to the Free Press. I know it's not the same level 2 years before I did because I didn't think I was ready. There are lots of people that do that. Yes, the money is great, and you think about that for a second. But if you think beyond just that, you're trying to think about the bigger picture, and you want the best chance. He's been a coordinator for 1 year. 1 year.
You really think that he's going to interview and say, I don't think I'm ready to be a head coach?
No, he would never say he's not gonna say that. And of course he's going to interview because part of the process part of the learning process is interviewing. And maybe somebody would have thrown so much money at him that he would have had no choice but to take it. But I think
any head coaching job. You've been in this business long enough, Shawn. You know
you don't take any head coaching job.
I hope you're just saying this for effect because when there's an opportunity to be a head coach in any sport, you grab that opportunity.
No, you don't. And of coaches do that all the time.
If you don't have that kind of confidence in yourself, you don't even belong anywhere near a court or a rink or a field. If you don't think you can handle, that's what everybody's focus and goal is in coaching is to be a head coach. Otherwise, what do you want to be an assistant forever?
Well, no, first of all, stop denigrating assistants. There are plenty of lifetime assistants that are great coaches that make all sorts of differences with not just kids in college and players and offenses and or defenses or whatever and help out. And that's what they want. I'm not saying that's Ben Johnson at all. And you're right. Most coaches
You're right. There's some lifers.
Most coaches do want to be head coaches, but a lot of coaches and a lot of human beings in general have a fair amount of self-awareness, a lot more than you give them credit for. And you got to understand, you don't just grab something because it's out there. There are coaches that turn down offers every year in every sport because they don't think it's the right opportunity or it's not the right timing or something else is going on. There's all sorts of reasons for that. It's not just money.
Sometimes I will say with this for you. Let's say someone like Sean Payton is in a different boat. He needs certain things. He's already an established star coach, and he probably wants, roster control, basically the GM, like Bill Belichick is, and these kind of guys, right? The top level. He doesn't want somebody looking over his shoulder. He wants full control of that team, right? That's what that level of coach. A young guy like Ben Johnson, he's in his mid-30s. He's only been a quarter for a little while. If he gets any opportunity to be a head coach, the pay isn't going to matter. He knows he's not going to command top dollar right now. He's not going to have roster control. There's no way that he would expect that. What he does need is an opportunity, and then he knows he can take that opportunity. And this is what happens with most coaches. Most of them don't have roster control, and they'll grow into that as they succeed. There's no way that the chances that he interviewed at these three places, virtual interviews, by the way, that interviewed with them, and that all three of them just didn't meet his standard for whatever reason, and he decided, no,
it's
I
not
need
the
more
standard.
Seasoning. I'm
It's
coming
not the
back.
standard.
I have unfinished business. Is ridiculous.
He told Carolina he was going to stay, right? He was the front runner. That's the report right now. So that's what I'm going to go on, because these reports are generally pretty true.
He's saving face. He's trying to save face, taking his hat out of the ring.
Why does he?
Before it gets out
what face does he have to
was turned
save?
down?
What face does he have to
because
save?
it looks bad. Does it look?
Who does it look bad to? Who does
it look better
to?
if you get turned down for a job, or if you say no, I'm not ready yet?
Who does it look bad to? Only the most cynical among us would think that. Most people don't care.
You don't. Sweet Lord.
Don't. You think people care that he looks bad? That's ridiculous. That's not how human nature works.
How do you think Aaron Glenn looks right now? Aaron Glenn is becoming a joke in the NFL as a Rooney Rule puppet. He's interviewed everywhere all the time.
Now you're talking about something different, aren't you? You're talking about the Rooney Rule.
How does that look?
What's that?
How is Aaron Glenn's interviewing?
That doesn't look bad to Aaron Glenn. That looks bad for the NFL, for the Rooney Rule, for the issues with that, for not having enough black head coaches. That's completely different. Now you
have the worst defense in the NFL, and you're interviewing this guy, and he's going on interviews. It's a joke. You think he's going to get hired? What would any fan base say if you hired the guy who was in charge of the worst defense in the NFL?
They
think you'd be happy? Think you could sell that?
They probably wouldn't be too happy. But right. Aaron Glenn, I mean, he did figure some things out. Now, I get it. Part of that was Dan Campbell moving Pleasant out, right? But the defense did get a little bit better. But you're conflating that's completely different with the Rooney Rule and all that. Well, why would Ben Johnson think he's going to look bad because he's interviewing at 35 years old or 36 or whatever he is after 1 year of a coordinator? That's going to be a stain on his
because
image? Are you out of your mind?
He's a hot commodity right now, and he needs to continue that perception. And it's not just him, it's his agent probably telling him, you need to continue this. If you get shot down for these, people are going to start asking questions. Why did you get shot down?
No,
you're not asking questions about that.
No, they're not. They're not going to start asking questions because a 1 year coordinator has
no questions about why
has such a good job for the Lions that he's going to get interviewed, but for whatever reason, he's not ready or they're not ready or whatever. But the reporting says, by the way, that Carolina again was the front runner, that he told them again that he didn't want to stay and that he didn't want to commit to that he felt like he had to come to Detroit or come back to Detroit. Look, he's taken a small risk that if they don't perform well, that his star will diminish next year. There's no question. But you're gambling on yourself. You're talking about not having the confidence to lead. How about having the confidence to come back and say, I can do this again?
There's no question you can do it again. Let me ask you this. Who was the front runner for the Vikings job last year?
I assume the coach that got it. It wasn't Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, it was Jim Harbaugh. Who do you think? Of course, he interviewed. He was the guy. He went there, and it all went sideways. Something didn't work. There was some problem in their understanding of the roles, whatever it was. We're never really going to know for sure. A lot of different sort of tales came out of that, but it doesn't look good, right? It doesn't look good when that happens for Jim Harbaugh.
You're talking about a coach who is a former NFL coach, a very successful, didn't win a Super Bowl, but got to one, right? In 3 straight NFC title games. You're talking about a successful NFL coach with a track record as a head coach and a very good resume at Stanford and the school before that, San Diego State or whatever.
University of San Diego.
Toreros. Yeah, University of San Diego. Sorry about that.
Toreros.
And some success, obviously, at Michigan. I mean, the back-to-back part of the back-to-back years hadn't happened yet, but that's incredibly different. And somebody who's been around the game so long, the game has changed, and so there's a perception: does his style work as the offense has changed? He hadn't coached in the NFL 9 years. That's a very different circumstance. Not only that, he's got what's the right word to say about how to describe the way he presents and his personality. He's got some quirks.
An acquired taste.
Yeah, that's one way. Let's just say there's some quirks. He's quirky a little bit. By all accounts, Ben Johnson is somebody that presents well, communicates well, all that. I mean, you've been around him, right? I've been around him.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think he comes off as a head coach? You think he might?
I think he's young. I think he's young, and I think he's got to get a little bit more of a track record. That's why I just wasn't convinced he was going to go. And not just because other teams, I thought other teams would probably want to interview him because it's just how the system works. But I didn't know if they would be ready when the interviews came. And I wasn't convinced that he wanted to do it. It's one thing to go interview. It's another thing to actually want to go do it. I mean, you gotta be at a certain place. It's like Robert Saleh. That's another example. Now he ended up with the Jets. The Lions, wasn't he the first choice for the Lions? That was the
It depends
reporting.
on who you talk to, but not really, as far as I understand.
I mean,
he was a sentimental favorite among fans, and yet again, it's the fan thing of local guy and all this. But
I guess it depends on
was the front runner,
what you believe. Yeah, maybe he was.
Who you talk to and what you want to believe, and
But at the time, the Jets, maybe the Jets looked better for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe it was going to be too hard to come home. Who knows? I don't know. There are all sorts of stuff. All I know is that every year there are coaches that turn down either offers or don't let it get that far. I'm not quite interested for lots of reasons. And I don't think Ben Johnson has to worry about saving face with anyone. He's young. I mean, it'd be different if he were 15 years older and desperate to go get a job. He's not.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have to. I mean, he doesn't have it. To me, it's, trust me, man. I mean, he doesn't have to answer as many questions about why didn't it work out? Why didn't you get the job? Why he can say, hey, I exactly. Talk to my surrogate, Shawn Windsor. He'll tell you I wasn't. There was just something that didn't fit about it. Never mind that Houston has the number 2 pick. Indianapolis has the number 4 pick. Carolina has the number 9 pick. I can go pick my whatever quarterback I want.
It's not about the teams.
I'm not ready for that.
It's not about the teams. It's not about the teams. It's about him.
Listen, there are lots of factors for sure. He's got a family, blah blah blah. This and
it's
that.
Not
Where
the family. I mean, maybe the family's part of it, but it's not.
Yeah,
that's not it.
And some of it has to do with the fit. But I guarantee you that there's no way that there wasn't. If there was going to be an offer on the table, if he felt that was forthcoming, that he would have turned it down. Because we've had that before. We've had guys like, Josh McDaniel who had the job in, I think, with the Colts, right? And he turned them down. He accepted it, and then he backed out for whatever reason. It's rare. And that's why teams generally don't even officially extend an offer until the ink is dry on the contract, because they don't want to look stupid either. Like, what? You turned us down. Why? Then there's questions about why do they turn you down? So it's like getting dumped. Whoever gets dumped has to answer the question.
Yeah, but this isn't a show and about saving face and all that. What this is, especially for somebody that's young, and it's not just football. This is true in general. And you've heard this. You probably heard this when you were young. Go get the experience of interviewing, right? Go through the process. I'm sure Dan Campbell encouraged him to do that. I would be shocked if he didn't.
Of course.
Right? You got to go through that
everybody
process.
Should
learn how to do it. Get out there, see what it's like, see what it feels like to sit in an owner's office or a general manager's office or whomever or both, and see what that feels like to sit in that seat and feel the weight of the possibility of running an organization, not the whole organization, but running a team on your own. It's very different. So go get a sense of that. That's valuable stuff. So he absolutely should have done it, right? If that's his ultimate goal. If that's his ultimate goal.
I think Dan Campbell, and this is part of the reason that probably Aaron Glenn is still interviewing, is, go get that experience. Maybe it'll work out. Even if it doesn't work out, you have that experience. You meet different teams, different, leadership groups, owners, whatever it is. And maybe that does help. That was one of the things with Jim Schwartz, by the way, is everybody thought he was going to get a job early because he was a smart guy and everything. And, defensive genius, whatever. But he didn't interview well. He was a little bit too, I don't know what it was, practiced, or he didn't come off as too natural. I think he had these elaborate PowerPoints that he would present, and it just didn't click. But he had to learn that. He had to go through a few rounds of it. But he also didn't have the best. He didn't have at one point the top defense in the NFL. He wasn't resurrecting a quarterback's career and turning this team around and being everybody in the NFL, from what we've heard, is that he's legit. He's a legit offensive genius, and that's one of the things when the teams interview them, of course they vet him by talking to other people in the NFL. The NFL is a small world. Like, what do scouts think? What do other people think? What do other coaches think?
No,
People
there's no question. That was my point about St. Brown and being a star within the NFL. Football people know that, right? But not the fans. It's because it is a very small world. No, you're absolutely right. The interesting thing about Ben Johnson too is that there's no, like, McVay got to LA with a similar sort of WonderCon kind of vibe, right? But people thought about his system. I don't know that they think about Ben Johnson's system as much as they think about, and partly this is due to Campbell and the way he's kind of talked about him and promoted him, is the way he relates, the way he adapts to his people. I mean, there's a good quote from Penei Sewell about how much the offense is geared around what the capabilities are, the offensive players they have. And, you don't think of that as a system. You think of that as, wow, somebody can really see and then adapt and then communicate how they want to adapt. And these are the things we've heard about Johnson. I'm sure this is what you picked up on from the players and from Campbell all season. And that's really interesting. And that's not going to go away, right? That's not flavor of the month or flavor of the year system, is it? That's something fundamental in him.
Yep.
And I would think that makes him even more appealing in the long run.
The thing with Ben Johnson, I would say, is, Sean McVay is a good example because he comes from NFL bloodlines. John McVay was his grandfather, longtime GM, I think, for San Francisco. So he already has that bloodline in him. And if you talk to him, he's like a little pit bull. He's like a little terrier. He's like, very, very aggressive and, engaging. I don't know if he learned that or if he was just always like that or honed it or whatever it was. Ben Johnson's just not that way.
No, it's not.
And I think it's going to take an owner to see past that and understand. I mean, if you've been to Lions games, at Ford Field or wherever, it's interesting that he's, as the offensive coordinator, what generally happens is, you're guiding the offense, and when the team, punts or whatever, and they come off the field, the coordinators often talk to the quarterbacks because they're the ones who are talking to the quarterbacks, relaying the plays. And there's a dialogue, and they go over, sit down with their whatever tablets and go over some plays and blah, 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 talk a little bit. Ben Johnson doesn't do that. He walks over to the bench, to the defensive bench that's empty now, and goes over there and he starts looking at his, at his stuff, his notes, his tablet. He's sitting off by himself. His mind works differently. It's almost like a beautiful mind thing. In fact, people have actually joked about that. It's got kind of a beautiful mind attitude. That's a different kind of a person that you have to be comfortable with. And maybe I'm guessing that's what one of the issues was, is he just didn't come off as this polished football-y type guy that would make everybody happy, the owners, to present him. Oh, man, this is our guy. He's, whatever. He's going to lead our team. He's going to be the face of our team. Strong guy, strong leader, good spokesman. And you've been to his press conferences, Shawn. He's a quieter guy.
He is. He's not rah. He's not rah, but he's plenty polished. He's not stumbling. He's not stumbling over his words.
No.
And to a man in the offense, the offensive players for the Lions speak about how good he is at communicating with them. So, that speaks to one, and two, how good he is at getting them ready to play. So there's some motivational skill in there too. And by getting ready to play, they don't just mean diagramming and laying out the whole plan, because plans go awry. There's 3 plays in sometimes, right, or 1 play in. But so no, I think he's just young, and he's got to figure this out a little bit, and he's got to learn. There's some leadership stuff, right, that he's going to have to figure out at some point, because it's those seats are. The gap between the coordinator and the head coaching job is it's a big gap, isn't it? In terms of leadership.
It can be for someone who hasn't had the job long enough. And you know what? They throw a lot of stuff at you in those interviews. Hey, if there's an arrest for this, what do you do? If there's this problem with drugs, if there's domestic abuse, how would you handle this? And you better have a damn good answer for that. And you shouldn't, you have to know how that stuff works and how you'd handle it. It's a tough job.
No, it is. And I would bet he was prepped by Campbell.
I'm sure he had tons of prep.
And some other people who leaned on it. And I would also bet that
his agencies prep them.
Yeah, no.
It's like debate prep.
No, that too, for sure. I just think that I would bet you, as much as Campbell supported him to go out and do this, And because he's a guy that had that with Sean Payton, right? So he's had some of that. I would bet you he also has said, hey, if you decide to stay or you want to stay, we can add some things. You can think about head coaching. You can not shadow him. It's not like he's an intern. You know what I mean? His role is vital and incredibly valuable. But and what he brings. But I would bet there's some of that, right? You stay one more year, and we'll have you look at the organization in various times and spots from a different angle and think about that for you know what I mean, and learn. And I think that could be really valuable too.
That's possible, but you also have Deuce Staley, who is officially the assistant head coach. He wants to be a head coach. You have Aaron Glenn, who wants to be a head. I mean, I'm sure Campbell has said this, right? I'll do anything I can to help him or any other coach, improve themselves, get better, get these opportunities. That means something to him. I have no doubt that if Ben Johnson wants that Campbell will help him in whatever way
I don't mean
can.
responsibilities as much as just the opportunity to think about it a little bit differently and pay attention in different ways,
Sure.
When you can. And by the way, Aaron Glenn, to me, just needs a good year. I mean, if the defense takes a big leap next year, I don't know if they will or not, but if they do, then that'll get him more interviews next year. We'll see. That's just how it works, right?
He has a great reputation in the NFL. He played a long time.
And a lot of charisma.
Really
a lot of charisma.
Yeah, he's got some charisma.
He does. With the players. Yeah.
I was disappointed, and this is what's interesting, by the way, going back to Hard Knocks in the summer, they showed Aaron Glenn leading a team meeting. They showed Deuce Staley leading a team meeting. They didn't show Ben Johnson leading a team meeting. Either he didn't, or they didn't want to put it out there that this guy has head coaching capability. And everybody, Aaron Glenn, AG, everybody talks about him and everything. I have never been in a team meeting with him, but the one they showed in Hard Knocks was unimpressive. It was underwhelming for a guy who's got to stand up there and give a team talk. Now, a lot of them are not. Even the head coaches who give them, that's, you can see these players like, we got to listen to this again, kind of rah-rah stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's well regarded, but he needs talking about somebody with seasoning. He needs a few good seasons under his belt.
You talking about Glenn?
Glenn, yeah.
Sometimes it's just 1 year. Look at Johnson; it just had the 1 year, and but
he doesn't have a track record of having one of the worst defenses for 2 straight years.
No, for sure. Although they got better, but you could look at it. If they were really good next year defensively, then you would say, okay, over the 3-year course, they in the middle of the second year they started to get better and started making plays and went 8-2, which the defense was part of. Obviously, they were, and I know they were opportunistic, and they're really good the next year. So, in any case, look, man, we need to take a break. We can't be because we're basically just arguing how we see human nature here. And we're using Ben Johnson as a proxy, and that's enough of that. Listeners, they're already sick of this. We need to take a break and give them a chance to take a break from us and listen to some sponsors. And we will be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, we were just talking about how when you're 18 and you're really good at basketball and you want to make the leap straight to the NBA, which you're going to be able to do at some point, I assume. And it doesn't work out. You say, should you have gone to college? No, actually, we weren't talking about that at all. That's just
you were talking about it in your own head. Yeah.
It's just another analogy for the Ben Johnson stuff. All right. Now that the Lions have Ben Johnson, so they're going to win the Super Bowl next year?
Oh, yeah.
So they're going to win the Super Bowl. So we like to do this little mental exercise. Fans like to do this too. Hopefully some of y'all do this as some of the listeners out there do this, Carlos, I would imagine. Kind of thinking about because we've had such a drought, 6 years with all 4 teams all under 500. I think the Lions 9-8 record is the first time since 2017 somebody was over 500 with a winning record, and that was actually the Lions in 2017. But probably they were at 9-7 would be my guess off the top of my head.
Jim Caldwell.
Yeah. In any case, other than that little blip there with Caldwell, it's been
glory days.
9-10 year drought for all 4 pro teams, longer for a couple of them. And the last couple of years is we've had new coaches, new general managers, rebuilds where the organizations are saying, yeah, we're in a rebuild. We've thought about, okay, who's the closest to the playoffs? Who's the closest to being a contender again? That sort of thing. And we were talking about this about a year ago, and most of us agreed that we thought the Tigers, based on their season ending run the year before, I don't know, over the last 60 games or so, and the success they showed under AJ Hinch. And that did not happen. So I think it's time to reset that, man, and think about who's first and second and third and fourth. I think the obvious one is first, but what say you?
Well, I think you have to go with the Red Wings, and
first or no?
I mean, the Lions first.
Okay.
There's no question about that.
Yeah.
By the way, that's going to be a fun thing about this next season for the Lions. Is there's going to be the expectations going to be sky high.
Oh,
and now how do you handle those high expectations, right? Because the Lions are good at being lovable losers sometimes, but they don't do great with high expectations. So that'll be fun. Maybe this is a different thing now with this regime, but they're clearly number one. There's no question.
How are fans going to handle that expectation? Especially if they don't meet it.
You know what? And the Ben Johnson reaction, from what I saw in comments and emails and social media, there was this kind of like relief of like, thank goodness that he didn't go. Is this really happening? Are we able to get, there was so much relief about it. Like, do we really deserve this? Are we worthy of this? Is it, is it okay to believe?
It's totally true.
That's going to be, and it'll be fun to see if they're able to give the fans what they want and frankly, what they deserve. Cause this is a tortured fan base. But if they don't, that's also going to be fun because it's going to be the Titanic hitting the iceberg. So, maybe not fun for the people on the Titanic, but, fun when you're in the movie theater, I guess, and watching Leo and Kate. But so that's going to be adds a whole new layer of interest on this team. But number two, who do you think? Who do you got for number two?
Well, first of all, I was just thinking about this, trying to think of a similar situation in this town where a team showed a lot of promise. And I guess the Tigers showed some promise 2 years ago, right? At the end of the season, which is why people were, Alavila was at spring training last year talking about, we expect to make the playoffs. Inch was saying that too. And then it just the bottom fell out. So I guess that's a pretty good example.
Well, let me just say this about that, about that after the 2021 season, right? Is I think we talked about that. I think you mentioned something about that we were asked to write or guess or whatever, pontificate in the Free Press about who is the next closest to getting into the playoffs. Well, that didn't mean that anybody was necessarily close per se, but who was the closest? Which one of us is closer to being, most handsome man of the year? And
you are.
Magazine?
Yeah, clearly.
That's what we're talking about here. Not is it really true, but who's closer than the other? That was the issue. And I never thought the Tigers were close to making the playoffs, but yes, among the other in that 4-horse race, they seem like the closer team.
Well, in fairness, though, they did play at a playoff clip for a good chunk, 50, 60 games? Something like that in the end of the 2000.
The last 60 games.
They look like
close to a playoff is not 162 games.
No. But for a third of the season, they played like a playoff contending team. And I think so it wasn't that people thought they were a playoff team the next year for no reason, right? It was based on, and I think there's probably a little bit of anxiety with the Lions in that way because it's based on half a season.
Wow.
The Tigers was a third of a season, so
they went 8-2, and again, I know you don't want to give them credit, but Ben Johnson's offense was electric, dynamic, fun,
Well,
exciting.
yeah, no,
One of the best in the NFL.
and it
But
was
the
all
Tigers
year.
didn't have anything like that.
It was all year, right?
Yeah, the Tigers did not have this incredible pitching staff, this amazing bullpen, this power hitting lineup.
No, the Lions have the offensive line, right? I mean, that position group is among the best in the very best in the NFL.
It is, but just the offense as a whole is excellent, and that the Tigers never had that. They never had one of the best offenses or one of the best defenses or one of the best pitching staffs. They played well together for less than a half a season stretch toward the end
with young players that people thought were either
some young players and everybody, and let's not forget a lot of the hype was Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green.
No, for sure.
Here come the
young
saviors.
Guys. Yeah, when we already have these young pitchers who showed some flashes, right? I mean, they did. And so no, it was more projection a little bit, but they had some young talent, or at least what looked like young talent, and then injuries started happening and a whole host of stuff started happening. But a couple of signings didn't work out. I remember the hype after Meadows was signed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
It was
absolutely.
And then some people are thinking, well, if Tampa didn't want to keep him, and they're pretty good at evaluating talent, what's going on here, right? So not that they could have predicted some of the issues that Meadows had last season. In any case, I wonder. I'm with you. Yeah, it's the Wings. It's got to be the Wings.
Yeah,
for the second. Just, I mean, they're playing winning hockey right now, right? Maybe not playoff hockey. Some nights they might play playoff hockey, but they're playing winning hockey, and they're better than they were a year ago. And I think they're more organized. They don't give the puck away as much. There's not as many breakdowns. Although it was interesting because I saw a clip recently with Yzerman talking about the defense and why so many games have such wild swings now. Why, 10 years ago, especially a 2-0 goal, a 2-0 lead usually meant you were going to win or at least tie and go to extra time or whatever, and or extra period. And he was explaining that the fact that there are 32 teams, that goaltending, he didn't say goaltending was thin, but that everybody wants goaltending. It's getting harder to find goaltending. He just released his goaltender, and which was interesting. In any case, the fact that the style of play has changed a little bit. He was saying there's so much more skill now and puck possession, and that teams offensively have jumped way out in front of teams defensively. And so the hockey's trying to play catch up. It's funny, we don't think about hockey like that necessarily, like we do with football when you know what I mean, what offenses get and the defense got to catch. In any case, so Yzerman's trying to build this team as hockey is changing a little bit in the NHL and the way you win and the way you build contenders. And I think that's kind of interesting too. And I think that, so far it looks like he's up to this.
Yeah. I think that, there's been little doubt about Yzerman and how he understands, roster construction and all that. The big difference is Derek Lalonde, and that he came and, I don't think Blashill was a terrible coach. He had them in the playoff hunt in February of the previous year. But they just couldn't, they just weren't, their puck management wasn't good. They weren't being responsible.
No, they weren't
both ways. Mm-mm. And he talked about that, and even during the season, Blashill talked about it. We can't sacrifice defense for offense.
Too many turnovers in the middle of the ice, right?
Too many turnovers in the offensive zone and the neutral zone, all that stuff, and you're right about goaltending. It's hard to find. They've been looking for somebody. They thought it was Nedeljkovic, and now it's Husso has been very good. He's been good, but you need two goaltenders, and so they're struggling for that. The defense, Seider's still young, very good player, but still young. I think I've liked who they've added on defense, but it's just going to take a little bit of time. They've had some injuries.
Raymond's still young too, right? I mean, very young.
Who is that?
Raymond is still young too.
Raymond's still young. They're they have some guys on the team who have promise. And it's just going to take him. I mean, it's Lalonde's first year. There is improvement, but he knows what he wants. He knows what he's preaching, and they're showing glimpses of that style. So, but Eiserman's right. You add more teams, the talent pool gets thinner. It's going to be more difficult, and goaltending is always tough. I mean, as you know, I'm an LA Kings fan, and they've had a guy in net for a long time, Jonathan Quick. They've been basically trying to replace him for a while, and they had to. The guy they thought was their goaltender of the future, Cal Peterson, just flamed out, and they had to release him. So you're always looking for that successor to your. When you find a great goalie, you gotta, be on the lookout for the next guy, because injuries happen and guys get old and whatever it is. So the Wings are in search of that. But I think that it all makes sense right now that with their talent that they have, some of the younger players, some of the mix of veterans, the young veterans, the Larkins and the Bertuzzis and all that, that I think if they hold on to those guys, there's a chance for them to, if they don't make the playoffs this year. I think right now, as we speak, they're probably a little too far out of the wild card spot. The Eastern Conference is tough.
Very tough.
But I think that they'll be. I think that if they get healthier or stay healthier, they may get a little closer to a wild card spot toward the end of the season.
They could.
But I think next year they would have a chance.
They could. I think the bigger picture too is the most important picture. A lot of serious Wings fans wonder about, with Dylan Larkin, right? You mentioned Bertuzzi too, is a good goal scorer, but those two guys aren't Zetterberg and Datsuk. So are some of the young guys going to pop like that eventually? Because that's what we're really talking about. You can't. It's in any sport. The 2004 Pistons being the example, it's really, really hard to win everything, because that's ultimately what we're talking about, right? Not just playoff contention on the margins. Although in hockey, you get in as an 8 seed, you can get some puck luck and move. But do they have the guys? Do they have the high end, one or two high end guys?
They have enough guys who could get them to the playoffs. I mean, Larkin's a really good two-way player.
No, he is. But to compete for a cup,
compete for a cup? No, they don't have those guys right now.
Do they have anywhere in the system potential? Because you need that, right?
They don't have a Sidney Crosby or an Ovechkin or someone like that. They don't have a Connor McDavid. They don't have they do not have the roster right now. But that also, let's not forget, when the Wings were competing for the cup, they add key free agents, at the trade deadline. They get guys who come and they either rent them or they re-sign them, but you add those guys. So, I mean, the Brett Hulls and the Luke Robitailles and those kind of guys, they come when the team is ready. So it's hard to have a lot of homegrown guys in your system who are those guys. But they do not have that yet.
Yeah, not a lot of them, but you need one or two, right? And who knows?
Mo Seider might be.
He might be on the defensive end. Raymond,
Kings,
is Raymond good enough? I mean, not now. I'm saying, does he have enough potential?
I don't think so. I mean, to be like a star guy, like a McDavid, he's not going to be that.
Nobody's like McDavid, but right? That's the thing. Can you be?
I think in the it's too hard to. I don't think they have that right now. But the one hope is, like the Kings, right? The Kings won 2 cups. A lot of that was a big part of that was Drew Doughty on the blue line. And they have Mo Seider. Can Mo Seider be Drew Doughty? Can he quarterback, the power play? Can he be that, that hard grinding guy? I don't know. Maybe he'll grow into that more.
Yeah. He might be. No, his ceiling seems to be, as at least in his role, as high as anybody's in the organization, right?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, he could have a very.
I mean, who knows? Yeah. I mean, who knows? Yeah. So I'm with you in terms of just the playoffs. Cup contention is a little bit different. Obviously, there are moves that I'm sure Yzerman's thinking about, and players he's probably thinking about, and wish lists and all that we don't know about or we haven't seen yet. But I'm with you on that. Who's your number 3?
Oh, I mean, you right now, I would if Cade Cunningham were healthy, I would say it was the Pistons. But his injury and how long it's going to take him to come back from that and be the player he was, and not only that, but take yet another step and become an even better player. But in the NBA, if they get that French guy in number one, whatever his name is, I'm sure someone can help us remember that name. But you know, the NBA can turn on a dime, right? If you get one or two players in the draft, if you win the lottery, all that stuff. But before that happens, I'd have to say that the Tigers would be closer in some way, because if you have health from Riley Green, if Torkelson, you know, finds his stroke and can hit, if Spencer Turnbull comes back from his injury and throws another no-hitter, gets to that level again, they have enough pieces, and the AL Central's still weak. I would give them a better chance than the Pistons are just such a question mark right now because of Cunningham.
Yeah, the problem with the Tigers too is the Tommy John, right? With Mize and
yeah.
I mean, what's Skubal going to be? It's the young pitching is always a question mark, because it's young pitching, but it's really a question mark because of the injuries now. So your point about Torkelson obviously is a good one. You don't know what kind of hitters he's going to be. God, it's so hard to project. These two sports to me are the hardest to project. Maybe that's just me, but it just seems like baseball and hockey are.
You got to wait for the drafts to pan out.
Really, really hard to project. You know, football is probably the easiest, although that's not easy either, because you have 3 years at college ball, and I know that doesn't translate to the NFL, obviously in a lot of ways, but with hockey prospects and baseball prospects, yeah, they're just stashed away, and basketball is hard to project too. Obviously, the draft is just go back and look at the draft every year, and you can see how many guys don't turn out from the top, and how many guys from the late first round end up being an all-star. So it happens every year, but that's a tough one, man. 3 and 4. The Cunningham injury really, really hurt everything, especially his development. You know, you miss that second year at that age. That's really tough. But other players have survived it and come back. And I mean, I don't want to compare him to Steph Curry, but Curry's a great example because he had all those ankle issues when he was young, and when his rookie deal was up, there were a lot of people in that organization in basketball that didn't. I'm trying to remember what he signed for, $48 million in 4 years or something ridiculously low number. But people thought it was crazy at the time. Like, do you really want to invest in a guy that can't stay on the court? I don't know that we're going to get there with Cunningham. From what I've read, and I have not been around, I think he actually talked. The team's in Paris right now as we're recording this, and I think he spoke for the first time since his surgery in Paris. And apparently this is something that's been nagging him and dogging him on and off for a while, last year included.
Oh.
Right. So, and maybe even going back to his college days. So maybe missing a year and getting that surgery on the fracture in his leg would be, maybe it'll be a great thing for him in the long run. But in any case, yeah, losing him, really, really, it's tough to tell what they've got. I don't know about the young guards. We don't want to sit here and break down the whole roster and the whole team. We can do that on another show when we get Omari in here. But I would say, oh God, I don't know, man. Maybe the Tigers at 3.
Yeah,
I just basketball. When you say it can turn on a dime, what can turn on a dime is you can get a really promising young player on a dime. But even when you get a promising young player, I mean, Jordan didn't win until 6 years, 7 years in, right? LeBron took how many years? I mean, that's great when you get a star, but then you're talking about another half a decade before you're really competing, right?
But just making the playoffs is what we're talking about. Just in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Eastern, like hockey, like
and it's
the
easier
NHL.
to get in the playoffs in NBA than in baseball. So
right, but it's like the NHL, right? And it's actually similar right now. The NBA,
it's even easier with the playing game.
The Eastern Conference in the NBA is super deep too, and there's lots of good young talent. In fact, the power dynamic has shifted from the West to the East for the first time in a long, long time. But in any case, yeah, the playoffs. Yeah, if we're just talking about the playoffs, maybe the Pistons. I don't know, man. They're banking on the French guy. Is that what you're saying?
French guy,
Wembanyama. I think I'm going to go with the Tigers. I just think the Pistons they've got some talent. They got some young pieces. I'm not sure how they fit. Maybe Cade comes back next year and is a revelation, and maybe they get lucky in the lottery, and boom, it all comes together.
Yeah,
I mean that's possible. That's what you mean by turn on a dime, right?
Or he comes back next year and it's Wembanyama's team. Like, listen, Sonny, this is how it runs now. I'm the top dog here.
Yeah, or they get another player and come in and play well as a rookie, and
trade Cade. Yeah,
and who knows? But I would say the Tigers. I know that probably sounds crazy.
It sounds, and that's the one thing with baseball too, is you never know, health is part of it. As you know, I'm a Dodgers fan, and every year it's the whole health thing with Clayton Kershaw and when Rich Hill was on the team, and different things, and how the manager manages his staff, his rotation, playing time. It can all come together. The Tigers have not shown us a lot of promise, but the Pistons are it's just such a question mark.
They are, and I don't like the way they compete a lot this year. And I hate to say that. I respect the staff; they've got a good track record. We'll see what happens as the year goes on. And again, you lose Cunningham. They've had some other injuries. Jaden Ivey is all over the place as a rookie, and the best part about this year and since Cunningham's gone down is the development of Killian Hayes, who looks like a real
guy. Yeah,
looks like a real rotation player, and probably their best perimeter defender, and just playing with so much more confidence. And it makes me wonder now how good he actually might become. Who knows? I mean, again, sports is littered with stories of people that figured out 3-4 years in, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll be that, but he's certainly shown he's an NBA player this year. Other than that, though, man, they have lots of nights where it's kind of like the Wings last year. They have lots of nights where they just don't compete. And I get it, Eisman's point about the skill and hockey changing in the offense. The NBA scoring at record paces this year. It's harder than ever to play defense. So you're going to have nights where you look like maybe you're not competing. But I do think there are just lots of nights where they're just not. There's no oomph. And that's a question for me.
Yeah, no, it's legitimate. I mean, it's very uneven, and that's something that probably shouldn't matter if Cade's not on the court. If you don't have your star,
no,
that competitive level should be there. As your boy Tom Izzo could tell you, competing against Purdue the other day, even without your guy Hall, it should still be there.
It should be. No, you're right. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Michigan State because their last couple of years. Now the COVID year was weird, but last year in particular, they were uneven with their compete level a little bit, which is unusual for that program. But yeah, no, it matters, and I think that matters in hockey and basketball more than any other team sport. Well, I mean, you could say football too, right? But football's so physical anyway. You have to bring a certain amount of compete level just to survive and not get hurt, right?
Not get killed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of built. It's sort of built into that game. You get out on the football field with, then you're in trouble.
Well, you do see. I mean, and this is one thing. I hope the fans it resonates with them. But I have noticed, even in the Matt Patricia era, their tackling was better. For a long time, that tackling was not good. Some fundamental stuff. Like I was even shocked. Like, this is the NFL. You guys should need to be able to take better angles and compete, try a little harder, because the secondary guys don't really love to tackle. And I think that's been a consistent thing that we've seen the last few years under two different regimes, that they've gotten better at least that. Maybe they're not as skilled as they hope they would be, but the compete, the effort is there.
It's really amazing how often you hear, and it's interesting with baseball too, because obviously there's a compete level in baseball. You don't think about it as much because it's such a game of skill, but yeah, the compete level in baseball can mean, are you gonna? Leland used to talk about a lot of old baseball guys used to talk about this. Are you going to give away in a bat? Are you going to go up there and focus and not just, I'm all right, I'm just swinging? Are you going to focus and try to? So yes, there's a compete level in baseball. That's one of the ways. But yeah, hockey and basketball. How many times do you hear coaches, especially after losses, talk about, and even players? Well, we didn't compete. It's so true. With football, you often hear, well, we didn't execute.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
There's because there's an assumption that you're competing for the most part, right? But we weren't able to do this. We didn't, our technique.
It is different in the NFL and football to say we didn't compete. There's this indictment for some reason that it's not true of the other sports. And I think it's because they play so few games. It's like this indictment on the coach.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, the team. Are you saying the team quit? Well,
you got a whole week to build up to it, right?
So it's a great
point.
It's true. It's true though. It's like, and Campbell's even mentioned it this year. Like, we weren't as up. We had a good week of practice, but we just weren't as up for this game, or didn't, whatever.
He did. He mentioned it after the Carolina game in particular, and that was more. That was sort of compete, but also focus. And obviously they struggled to stop the run that day. But I think the interesting thing about basketball and hockey for fans is that fans of those sports can see fairly easily when their team is not competing, because they know what it looks like when they are. Yeah. And it's hard to sort of describe it, right? It's hard to articulate it, but when you see it.
And that's the one thing, and I hate to put on my Shawn Windsor hat. It's uncomfortable for me, but
you can be a coach. Yeah.
Yeah, giving the players, credit for, sometimes it's more than just competing. I mean, Frank Ragnow this year played on one foot, basically. He had this massive toe problem, and he didn't miss a game. And I think that's one of the quiet reasons he made the Pro Bowl this year, even though I don't know if he had his best year, but when you consider what he was playing through to play at that level, and you never know what athletes are going through, what's bothering you. You would just think, oh, he's just not chasing down that deep fly ball to the gap, or he's not tackling, or he's not whatever. You don't know what they're dealing with sometimes, and they're not going to broadcast it. So you sometimes think it's a competitive thing or an effort thing, but you don't always know the story. So it's a little hard sometimes when guys appear to not be trying and people are judging them harshly.
No, it is. And you're right. Sometimes you just don't know. You can generally tell though when it's the whole team, right? Because, or if there are a few and it sort of drags the whole team down. In hockey, or, how quickly are they chasing the puck into the corner?
Right.
In basketball, how quickly you're rotating out on a shooter in the corner. If you just kind of see that kind of couple of steps and barely raise the arm up to contest, you can just tell. And it's the same with hockey. You can just, is there that little extra giddy up as they're trying to go chase? And in any case, I don't know how we got onto this, man, but so let's we need to take one more quick break. But before we do, let's just say what you got: Lions, Red Wings, Pistons, Tigers. Is that yours?
No, I got Tigers, Pistons.
Tigers, Pistons. I can't believe I'm agreeing with you because you're right.
The light.
Because the NBA, you can. Let's face it, man. It's hard to win, and all for this, it's really hard to rebuild. It's really hard to get to the playoffs, even though we make fun of how easy it is in some ways. It's hard to get out of losing cultures. The Lions are obviously doing that. The other teams are trying. So I don't know, but I'm with you. The next year, let's see. The Lions will be at 4 and the Tigers will be at 1. It'll flip flop again. Yeah. All right, man. Let's take one more quick break. Be back with your favorite thing, and finish up Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.
Hello, I'm Phil Friend, the host and producer of Spartan Speak, a podcast collaboration between the Detroit Free Press and Lansing State Journal focusing on Michigan State sports. Each week, I'm joined by the OGs of the MSU podcasting game, Freak beat writer Chris Laurie and LSJ sports columnist Graham Couch, as we discuss and dissect the latest sports news coming out of East Lansing. Not only is Spartan Speak one of, if not the longest-running MSU sports podcast out there, you won't find a show with two people as clued into the Spartans as Chris and Graham, each of whom have spent a decade plus covering MSU and bring years of institutional knowledge and insight to the podcast. And once in a while, they'll let me throw out a take as well. Along with discussing the latest news, we'll break down the Spartans' last game on the hardwood and the gridiron. What went right? What went wrong? Jet sweep. Again? For both Mel Tucker and Tom Izzo, get you ready for the next game, make predictions, and so much more. We can also guarantee at least one reference to Kalamazoo every podcast. So if you haven't already, download, subscribe, and listen to Spartan Speak on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or on your podcast app of choice.
Welcome back to more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. It's your favorite part of the show, my man. It's time
to talk about myself.
Yeah, it's time for instead of just your opinions on the world, now you're actually talking about your own life. It's a beautiful thing. Time for my favorite thing. What you got?
This was kind of a dumb one, but it's kind of fun and a little meta. But I think you'll enjoy it too because I was just flipping around on the old streaming channels, and I like the show Rick and Morty, the animated cartoon. And I don't watch it all the time, but I was catching up on, I think it was the 5th season. I think they're in the 6th now, but I was watching the first episode of the 5th season, and they have the one part of the show that made me laugh, and I was watching it late at night. So my wife was already in bed and asleep, and I'm downstairs watching it, and I had to control my laughter because if anybody watches this show, they know how crazy and existential and metaphysical the whole show gets. And there's this one premise where I'm not going to get too deep into it, but the boy, Morty, a little teenager, he's ordered to go. They have a house guest over and they have some cheap wine. And the mad scientist grandfather decides to build this time portal just so they can go through there and age the wine really fast. So that's all the reason they have this time portal. And they go in there and they discover this whole new world. And there's a character named Hoovy. He looks like a dog. He's voiced by Jim Gaffigan. Well, what they don't understand is that every time they go in the portal, like they're time jumping like decades, if not centuries, and they're messing with their whole civilization just by going and retrieving these cheap jugs of wine just for a stupid dinner guest. And they end up like this little teenage boy ends up becoming this villain to this whole civilization. He has no idea it's happening. He just thinks he's going in to get some wine because he keeps dropping the wine and breaking the jars of wine, the jugs of wine. But he becomes this weird, like mythological creature. So much time passes that the civilization starts fighting with themselves about, does this person really exist? Will this child ever return and make our life a hell again? And he keeps coming back, but it just tears down the civilization. And the thing that made me laugh, and I thought about you, Shawn, was how it all speaks to the idea of the internal struggle of how you create these one-sided fights within yourself of, I don't like this person or I don't like this situation. Meanwhile, the other people have no idea that this is even going on. They don't even know you exist. They don't care.
Right.
So it's all about the internal struggle. But they did such a great job of illustrating that, figuratively and literally. It really made me laugh. So if you get to catch episode 1 of season 5 on Rick and Morty, it's worth a watch.
Well, that sounds really fun. I would say I'm going to keep this simple and short. I have not cooked a lot the last several months. We've cooked here some. When your kids are gone to some degree, and I still have one who's around some, but your habits change, right? The whole idea of dinner changes, and these days with inflation in the grocery store, it's often easier to get carry out. I mean, not easier, cheaper. It obviously depends on where you're going, but But to go get a salad, say at a restaurant down the street, to go is often less expensive than going to get a bunch of salad fixins and dressing fixins. Oh, if you want a particular kind of dressing at the grocery store, it's kind of amazing that that's where we're at. But it's just the economics of where we're at now, not to mention all the other life stuff. So I just haven't cooked as much. It's not necessarily money per se. It's just, Carlos, sometimes you get a little blue, or you get, you're talking about internal struggle and so forth. And the way I get back to cooking is usually you get to a point where you're like, okay, that's enough. I need a little bit of therapy.
Enough with the nuggets, with the Daybreak nuggets.
I need a little bit of therapy. And when I say not cooking, I mean, you still do basic, simple stuff, but so last week I decided to make on back-to-back nights a lasagna and then a pot roast. And the lasagna I make is probably 3 hours start to finish, and the pot roast is 6 to 7. Now that's not that's not standing in the kitchen the whole time. It's probably an hour to get it in the oven, an hour and a half, hour or so to get it in the oven, hour and a half maybe. And then depending on the size of the roast, another 3.5 to 4 in the oven braising. And then there's work after to pull the veggies out, pull the roast out, take the jus, boil it down, reduce it down, rather. Boil it sounds so crude, doesn't it? Reduce it down and make anyway, there's lots of steps. And it's a lot of work. But it lifted it lifted the spirit, man. You get into this time of the year. I know we're not in the dog days of February. We don't have snow, but I was just happy that I could still do it. Because sometimes, as you get a little older, you just think, God, there's things you can't do anymore. And I know it sounds ridiculous, say, can you still cook? But making those kind of meals is an investment of time, and the pots are heavy, and there's a fair amount of prep, and I was glad to see that I could still do that. And they were both pretty delicious, by the way. And the best part then of all of it, other than just the therapeutic quality of it, and the fact that you tell yourself you can still, or you show yourself you can still do it, is that then you get to share. So, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, friends, you can deliver little containers of lasagna and pot roast. And that was actually the best part, is taking food. Here's a little lunch, here's a little dinner. So, yeah.
I have to say, the one thing is I just don't believe any of what you said, because you're, having watched you and tasted your food, you're like a concert pianist wondering if he can still play chopsticks. Come on, man. You make brisket. You made some intricate stuff. To think you can't make a pot roast and lasagna. Seriously.
No, it's the mental challenge of, do you have the wherewithal to do it physically and mentally, to do it and have the patience and just the strength. When you get tired and you run down a little bit and you start feeling a little blue, then all of a sudden even the simplest things like shaving feels like a win. You know what I mean? It's true.
Well, we might have to have someone check in on you, Shawn.
And it's harder to relate to this when you're younger, obviously, but you have points sometimes where you just, even the simplest tasks,
Sure.
feel like, or the pile of paperwork on your desk, and you get through those, the relief that you feel with that. Vacuum in the house.
Yeah. The little wins.
Yeah, they just feel like minor victories. Yeah. and the pot roast and the lasagna felt like a medium victory. So anyway, so that's my favorite thing. All right, my man, let's get out of here, eh? My goodness. We didn't even have a guest.
I know.
What's the matter with us?
Didn't come up with the paycheck for Briquette to join us. She's probably still asleep.
I know. All right, man, that was fun. It's good to see you. Good to talk to you. We should tell the listeners we're doing a somewhat similar version of the rankings for print, and trying to have a little fun with that, taking the podcast to the page a little bit, and we'll see what that's like. So check that out. I don't know what day that's going to run, but soon. Look for it soon at freep.com.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you're listening to this, you know how to get to freep.com.
Give Shawn some clicks.
Yeah. Well, no, give Carlos the clicks, because it really.
Oh, I won't even be on there. I won't get a byline.
It makes him feel better. Then he enjoys his life a little bit more, which is what we want. All right, man. That was fun. Who do we need to thank? One last time. One last time.
One last time at the top. Let's do it at the top.
Yeah, let's do it at the top.
We need to thank Free Press Editor. He doesn't have a. Does he have a title for the podcast? Actually, I don't even remember.
Yeah,
No.
He's the executive producer. I don't know. Let's just
No, because Anjanette and Kirk are.
and Kirkland.
So
Yeah.
Peter Bhatia, our editor, is unfortunately leaving the Free Press to pursue something else. But he's been our leader for several years. We're all going to miss him, and he helped make this podcast possible. And then on top of that, we have Robin Chan and Andrew Hammond, our producers for the show, and co-executive producers Anjanelle Delgado and Kirkland Crawford.
Yeah, so now that we have the thank yous out of the way, thank you, peeps, people, hombres. What do you want to say?
Dudes,
Bros. How about that? Gals.
Rick and Morty, bro. Yeah. Everybody's a bro. Rick and
Everybody's a bro. Dudettes. In any case, no. Thank you. We definitely need to thank them. We want to thank you though, mostly for and most importantly for listening, for putting up with this, for checking into the Free Press Sports podcast with Carlos Menares and me, Shawn. Thank you. In any case, you can find us where you find your favorite podcasts. When you get to Spotify, when you get to Apple, give us a rating. Most importantly, though, subscribe, please. It's good for y'all. It makes it easier. It's good for us. It's good for everybody, and that's what we're all about. Until next week, Carlos. Right?
Until next week.
All right. We'll be back then with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.